Hello, everyone. Welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick outside the comms, of course, Justin, providing audio commentary and madness where applicable. Oh boy, what a day! What a day! We finally got the Switch to Nintendo Direct, and oh, it's everything I was hoping and so much more. I do have a few gripes, in fairness. I do have a few gripes, but we'll get to that later in the show. So let's just start off with the beginning. I was gonna possibly do this later in the show, but you know what? I'll just open it up with a bang. We got the release date for Switch 2, which is June 5th this year. You heard it right, ladies and gentlemen. June 5th this year. Mark it down on the calendars. But no, it's sooner than I thought. Like, because here's the thing, right? I've been looking at this industry for a very long time, not to toot my own horn. And usually when it comes to this time of the year, there's two big release dates that people generally work around. There is the summer release date and the winter release date. So you get in the Christmas and stuff like that, and then you get the summer release date, right? My thought was that it was probably going to be a summer release date. Why? Just because of how Nintendo is, and I mean, it's the Switch, right? If anything works on the summer release date, it would be the Switch. Because funny enough, I was actually looking at D2, unrelated, I know, but hear me out. And Cross was actually talking about Astro Cross. He was talking about how when the possible new Frontiers destination is going to be real. When's all that news going to come out? Again, I'm going to not talk about that because of another video topic. But basically, he kind of did a poll with his audience live, and he goes, when's the most gaming time? When do you game the most, winter or summer? Because that was kind of the two dates of possibility. Either we stick in summer or we push it back to winter. And most people said they game more in winter and game very little in summer. But then again, when you look at the Switch, again, it's a weird parallel, but it's a machine designed to be portable. It's basically what happens if all the Nintendo consoles decided to, do a flippin' Dragon Ball Z Converge moment.
Combine.
And combine and came out of that, which is a very much by intention knowing Nintendo. And so it makes sense that they would release it for the summer window because again, it feels like a machine you'd take. Like it's a machine designed to be portable as all hell. So again, it feels very portable to have something during the summer, a time when you normally go around and do stuff, go vacationing,
You
whatever.
might
So
be
it makes sense.
traveling on the road a lot, so.
Exactly. So it feels right. And ugh, where to go with? Where to go with? You know what? I'm just gonna start with the bad and go into the good because it feels like a good way to end a show on a good note. Not ending it yet, but just in general. So, what I did find interesting about this show is actually no. Before I go into that, I should probably give you some details. We got a lot of details on how the Switch 2 works. It can go anywhere from 720, which is the baseline of the current Switch right now, all the way up to 4K, which is really interesting. Granted, I believe it said it'll be capped at, I think, 60 or 30 FPS. Let me check my notes again.
I
I have
believe it
three
was
pages of notes.
60 at the least.
Yeah, 60, I think. It might be. Goes from 120, so my guess is 180 can go at 120 FPS, but I thought I had in my notes here, again, 3 pages worth of notes, that no, I don't have when it is. My guess though, and it says in the show under the fine print that when you go to 4K, it caps at I think 30 or 60 FPS. Might be 60, but again, don't quote me. Which again, whether it's 30 or 60, the fact that they can run 4K at all is very impressive. Makes sense why the dock has a genuine like giant cooling fan in the back to cool the darn thing off, which fun fact is actually a current issue, not really an issue, but like kind of a possible issue going into the Switch 2, because the current Switch dock does get hot when it's charging. So can you imagine all this extra juice and power in the Switch 2? It's gonna need that
Keep
cooling
in
fan.
mind,
I wonder.
you're gonna want to take breaks. You remember those little notices that
Remember
you'd get
grass?
from all grass. You remember those
I know.
notices that you would get from the Wii and sometimes the DS going and letting you know to go and take breaks? You should probably take breaks every once in a while.
Go touch grass. I know. I don't know. I should judge either because frankly, what is grass at this point? I think it's like a green piece. I think it's like a green plant
I
you put
think
on a
it's
salad. I think.
this grayish brown thing on the ground.
What is this grayish? It's been so long since I've seen grass. The last time I saw it
It's
was
been so
winter.
long since I've seen living grass.
It's so long since I've seen living anything.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's But yeah, no, again, the fact that it can run that is impressive. And again, the fact that it'll probably need the fan makes sense when you consider the juice in the system, right? But yeah, no, on the topic of what it can do as well, it can do HDR, which again makes sense. It is much bigger than the Switch. It is, I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it is far bigger than the Switch. Interestingly enough, they did make a point to say that it is as thin as the Switch One, which probably took them a lot of R&D to figure out how to do. They're like, okay, how do we make something as powerful but not as thick? So the only option was just to make it bigger. Which, hey, works for the resolution. Two birds, one stone, right?
You kind of had to. You kind of had to.
Yeah, that is true. You kind of had to, right? So, again, that is very good. One thing that is really good, which kind of solves the problem we were talking about last stream, I believe, was how they're going to handle the memory when it comes to the games. And turns out, by making it very big. So the base Switch has about 32 gigs of memory. This Switch, the Switch 2, has 256 gigabytes over the base 32 of the Switch 1. So that is, in their own words, 8 times more memory than the Switch 1. So yeah, gonna fit a lot of games on that one. Guess that solves the question of how we're gonna handle having, libraries of games people are transferring over and stuff like that.
Why
And yeah,
and how we are able to go and constantly move around and utilize very large games because they're setting it up for you to do so.
speaking of very large games, that kind of segments into the next part of the show, right? Another big question I had going into the Switch 2 was how it's going to handle compatibility. Not compatibility in terms of just Switch 1 to Switch. Well, yeah, kind of Switch 1 to Switch 2, but just games in general, right? They have said that they're going to support the Switch 1 library, but they haven't said to what end. And in fairness, they still haven't said to what end, which is kind of the bad part of the show, where this kind of whole show, they pretty much just talked about the games they want to bring onto the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, which we'll get to that. But, most of it, this show was pretty much just look at all these games from the console we're bringing on. We're bringing on Borderlands, Elden Ring, Cyberpunk. Get to that. All these games they want to bring over from the bigger consoles to the Switch, which, again, it just feels like they're punching above their weight again. It's like, kind of going off to the side for a second, but they're like, hey, Hogwarts Legacy. It's on the Switch 1. It's getting an upgraded version to the Switch 2. What is that? Again, wait till further in the show. We'll talk about that. But anyways, it's getting an upgraded version. It's going to look better, play better, yada yada. And it's like, okay, yeah, all the games on the Switch 2, or Switch 1, I guess at this point, that would benefit from the upgrade the Switch 2 could provide. They flip and turn around and say, oh yeah, now we're going to put Cyberpunk on the Switch 2 and Elden Ring. And it's like, oh, for Lord's sake. You solve one problem of performance and then you go create another. It's like, I get it. You're trying to punch above your weight, but, I admire
Sir,
your moxie.
please.
But just give me a game that looks and plays good. I don't want to play a game that looks like it's running on a potato. But again, going back to the games again, you heard me talk about upgraded versions and whatnot. And this kind of goes back to what I said before about my question of how things are going to run in compatibility's sake. So basically what they said is there's going to be 3 types of games you're going to find on the Switch 2. Games that are built exclusive for the Switch 2. We saw a few of those. Games that are compatible with the Switch 2. So games that are designed for the Switch 1 but have been, upgraded and either presumably a software update or something like that to be playable on the Switch 2 just as is. And then you're going to have upgraded versions. And they kind of showed off things like that with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, both of which they've confirmed will be upgraded versions that will play on the Switch 2. So you can either play it just as is or get the upgraded version, which it seems all of these upgraded versions are going to be side purchases in and of themselves. So while you can play them on the Switch 2, if you want to get the upgraded, the shiny looks and the better sunrises and, the better graphics, you're going to have to pay for that. How much they have not said, but again, probably still subject to change. They're probably still working out the bugs. But yeah, no. So those are going to be the 3 types of games you get on the Switch 2. My question is how many of the Switch 1 games are going to be compatible with the Switch 2, right? Again, it's probably going to be publisher to publisher. Nintendo themselves probably, again, hasn't worked out all the details with the publishers yet, because there's a lot of them who published on the Switch 2, or the Switch 1.
Yeah.
It kind of is going back to the question we had a while ago where, if you don't remember, there was actually an article, and I should probably pull up this article and put on the description box, but basically what it was is that the story was a lot of publishers were actually concerned about their libraries getting ported over to the Switch 2 from the Switch 1. Reason being is because the publishers made the claim that because there's so many games on the Switch 1 at the time of that, which I think was again a year or two ago at this point, that when the Switch 2 launches, nobody's going to play the Switch 1 or Switch 2 if all the Switch 1 games get ported over because there's just so bloody many. So publishers are basically saying we're not going to be able to sell anything for a long while because people are still going to be playing the Switch 1 games.
Yes.
And so there was talk about Nintendo considering, not doing the whole cross compatibility thing. They later came out a year or two later and said, you know what, we've thought about it. We're still going to do the cross compatibility thing. But again, looking at this whole compatible upgraded version, kind of feels like they're going to have their cake and eat it too. So how do you think we're going to go about it? Where does the line draw here? Are we going to have 90% of the library, 60% of the library, 20% of the library? Like, how much of the Switch 1 is actually going to get ported over to the Switch 2? Again, that's my gripe with the show that we actually got, is that we don't know because despite telling us that that's how things are going to be, they didn't actually give us a percentile of where that line is. Probably because they don't themselves know, because precedent would say, because I think PlayStation or Xbox had this happen in the past, where it's a publisher per publisher basis. And generally, what ends up happening is publishers will look at their catalog and just in general and say, okay, which games were popular, which games are kind of, iconic, port those over because those are still going to probably sell. And then games that are more niche or just not as well known are just going to be left behind on Switch 1. So that's presumably how I imagine things are going to go. But again, we don't know. So again, I'm kind of curious to see how that'll go. And again, if the publisher is really interested in the game, they might get an upgraded version, but we will see.
We're gonna have to wait and find out on that front because of the fact that, again, the publishers are going to have to help Nintendo if they're gonna do any upgrades to their games in order to work with the Switch and all that. So
Exactly. So even if they don't go out of their way and make a full upgraded version, which is the third version you can find, which, like I said, is basically the game from the Switch 1, but not only has it been updated to work with the Switch 2, but it's even actually been bolstered, so better resolution, better graphics, better frame rates, usually the stuff that comes with more powerful systems, right? And that'll be the upgraded version. But even if they don't go that far and make a full upgrade and just make it compatible, again, it's going to be a case per case basis. Like, which bin do you want to put it in? Do you want to put it in, toss it away, compatible, or compatible with upgrade? Which again is going to presumably have a purchase attached to it. So, again, a businessman might sit there and go, okay, it might not be worth it to might not be worth it to just make it compatible. But if we make it compatible with an upgrade, you know. So it kind of gives developers and especially publishers options to what they want to go about doing. Again, I'm very curious to see what games they pull over to the Switch 2 because there are definitely games that I want to see get pulled over. Some of them I haven't even played yet, so it'd be kind of a pain if I bought it for the Switch 1 and never got around to even playing it.
Yeah.
But whatever. But again, we will see. More details for all of this, like they've said in their previous Nintendo Direct, is actually going to be on Nintendo Today. So any further updates for the Switch 2 are going to come from that, which is the app, which is their calendar mixed with the news feed. But again, we talked about that last stream, so go there if you want to hear more about that. So yeah, that's kind of how the games are going to work in terms of compatibility's sake. Moving on, another interesting little selling point they have beyond the whole punching above their weight is they really love the idea of making their Joy-Con a mouse now.
Yes.
Like, they've gone from let's make the mini Wii remote to let's make a mini mouse.
Let's make a Wii remote that can be utilized as a mouse.
Which, we were talking before the stream about, what was the game's name? Freaking Undertale's brother.
Deltarune?
Deltarune.
Yes.
If it's originally made for PC, so it has more of a PC-like mouse and keyboard feel. Maybe that's the thought. Games that are made for PC getting ported over. We'll see. Again, it kind of does open the door to possible PC-only games getting ported over. I mean, things like The Sims or Civ definitely feels like it would make more sense to be played with a mouse.
Civilization, yes. 100%.
So it definitely feels like it's a smart decision when you think about some games that might get ported over. Some games just don't feel good played on a controller.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other part about it too is that there are quite literally some games that you honestly cannot play unless you have a mouse.
True. True.
you kind of need a mouse no matter what. You could try it with the Joy-Con, but you're gonna have a hell of a time.
Yeah, you have to have like the pointer system that they kind of have in like Destiny 2. Gotta go back to that for a second. Where it's like,
Yeah.
which
And even then, it
gripes.
wasn't hell. It was hell.
So again, it makes sense. It makes sense. Let's see. Going down my list of 3 pages, I'm trying to keep this under half an hour. We're up like 15 minutes now. Goodness gracious. Oh, here's a good one. So they, not technically on the Switch 2, kind of on the Switch 2. They said for the Switch 2 that they're expanding their online, their online subscription service. And they're adding another tier. They're adding another tier, but they're also adding more services. So anyone who knows a Nintendo Online service knows that it's basically kind of like what you've got right now for the other consoles, right? Gives you multiplayer, gives you online storage, very useful things. Personally, way back in the day, until this day, still like, right at the idea of giving online multiplayer services behind a paywall, but I'm not going to soapbox, so we're just going to move on.
I'm not
But
angry.
yeah.
You're angry.
But yeah, no. So they're expanding it to, because if you know the service, it also includes a option called PlayStation, not PlayStation, Nintendo Classics. So you've got things like N64 there. I think some other titles as well, from one of the other generations, but I can't remember. So yeah, you got N64 games and stuff like that on there. They're adding a new whole console gen into that category behind, I can't remember what they call it, but I think it's like Nintendo Online Plus Expansion Pass, which is basically just another tier, sounds like. Which is, drumroll please, GameCube. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, to all the people who loved the GameCube.
I mean, I sound sarcastic when I say that, but I genuinely was happy to hear that. Like, I was genuinely giddy because there are some game like the of all the consoles that Nintendo's put out over the years, the N64 is iconic for being what it is. But beyond certain games, there's not many games that you would kind of sit there and be like, "Oh, that was a really great game." It was just great for being what it was, right? Don't get me wrong. I'd still go back and playing some Donkey Kong because again, classics be classics. But there are genuinely some games on the GameCube that are very fun to play in and of themselves. So the games we saw on there that they're gonna put on that they already seem to have working on that service are Wind Waker, for example. Fun fact: a lot of Legend of Zelda games got put out on GameCube, um, GameCube and Wii. So
And
it's
and DS too. Like
yeah, true. It's kind of split between the DS.
There's a few on the DS as well.
True. They kind of split between the three, right? Probably
Yeah.
more Wii and the DS, if I'm being honest.
I would say more GameCube. I know there's a few on the Wii, but I would say more GameCube.
I think it's more DS and probably GameCube, but.
Mm.
But yeah, no. So it opens up the door to a whole bunch of games. Like there's one Pokemon one that they saw or had on the list that they're hoping to put on there. There's a little robot game which I remember from way back in the day that I can't bloody remember the name of at the moment. There's like games I saw on the list. I'm like, oh, I finally get around to finishing those.
Yes.
So I'm genuinely excited to see what comes of that because again, there's just so many good games on the GameCube era that they could now port over. This opens the door to quite a bit actually, so I'm very excited to see what becomes of that. There are definitely some games that I really hope get on there. There's a certain mech battle game that I hope that I again can't remember the name of, but anyways, it's been a long time. I haven't played the GameCube in at least a decade, if not half a decade. So still have mine though. And again, this is very good because again, this kind of puts them one step more in the realm of game preservation, which up until very long time ago, or up until like more recently, they've always been apathetic at the least when it comes to game preservation. Like they've never been against it, but they've never been for it. Very much like I said, apathetic.
They didn't go out of their way to make cross compatibility and backwards compatibility. If they did, it was more of a happy accident.
Yeah. The DS is a good example of that we were talking about before the show, right? Like all DS games, to my knowledge, can play all other DS games for the most part. But that wasn't intentional. They just kind of did that because all the cartridges were the same, so it kind of works.
They didn't mess around with the cartridge system between every single type of DS that they made. They just stuck to it.
Exactly. You'll forgive the cat, by the by, in the
Yeah,
background.
the cat is being very annoying. The cat wants food, but at the same time doesn't seem to understand that it's not food time.
Just say you've fed the cat. We're not. The cat or you?
Don't worry about it.
Uh, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so yeah, that's kind of a big thing I want to address. Also, interestingly enough, I'm not going to go over the full list of games that we saw over this presentation that are getting brought over to the Switch, the Switch 2, I should say, because there's just so flippin' many of them. But one thing I do want to touch on, like I said, is some of the more interesting games that we saw. Like, again, they're bringing Cyberpunk 2077 onto the Switch. Ah, boy. I was joking with flippin' Justin before the show, and I'm like, because there was a point during the stream where the stream froze for a good like 10 minutes or so, or like a good 5-10 minutes. So when they mentioned the Cyberpunk stream, we could hear it, but we couldn't actually see it. So I couldn't actually see what it looked like in engine, because generally they show in engine stuff for things like that. But I just heard Cyberpunk 2077 and I just got flipping nom flashbacks. Release
He wasn't doing too
Cyberpunk.
well. He wasn't doing too well.
It's like, don't get me wrong, I didn't have a bad time with Cyberpunk because I got it on the PS5 for the upgraded system because I could kind of smell what was going to happen if I played it on the old gens. But I know the stories and I've seen the bugs, and it's like, here we go again.
The black void of death coming towards my player model. Yay!
Oh, no. It was never. Oh, I don't think it was ever that bad. That is. I don't think it was ever. Maybe
You
not.
never know.
It was not 76 bad, at least I hope. Maybe.
I hope. We don't know.
I hope.
We don't know for
Fingers
sure what
crossed.
happened to those soldiers.
They never came back. But yeah, no. So that'll be interesting to see. They're also putting Elden Ring on the Switch too, which ah boy. If like again, it goes back to what I said earlier in the show where it's like here's a game that probably runs terribly on the Switch 1, which is Hogwarts Legacy. Okay, it's getting an upgraded version for Switch 2. That's great to hear. It'll probably fix the game a lot and make it run way better on the Switch 2, make it actually playable, and then they flip and go and put Elden Ring on the game, Switch 2, and it's like, here we go again. You can't just have games that work well. You have to always punch above your weight, Nintendo, which, again, I respect, but just... I don't know. I don't know. That said, it does seem like From Software really does seem to be interested in the Switch too, because at the very end of the presentation, they revealed that From Software is actually making a whole new Souls-like game, which I don't remember what it was called. I actually don't have its name written down here. It looks like it looks like a mash between Bloodborne and Dark Souls. Literally with like it looks like you're playing as like a vampire or something like that, with like a Victorian Gothic aesthetic, which is where I get the Bloodborne from. And of course, it's Dark Souls because again, it's From Software and it plays like that. Oh, the heck! So it looks like they basically decided to make that and make it exclusively for the Switch. So yeah, apparently From Software is making an exclusive to Switch game. I'm really interested to see what becomes of that, legitimately. I bet my bottom dollar that in itself is going to sell a lot of Switches. But we'll see. We'll see. A lot of the dates we got for these games have not been revealed as of permanent. Like they've been revealed, but they haven't been nailed down to a specific day. Yeah. They mostly were like 2024. I think I saw one or two that were 2026, but most of them are like, or not 2024, 2025. Most of them were like, I think, or one or two of them were 2026, but most of them are like this year sometime. So, eh? But yeah, that's kind of the thing we have here. What else on my long list should I bring up? Brought up HDR, brought up this. Oh, here's where I forgot to mention. They have a new peripheral system. Again. And not just the GameCube one, where, yes, and I kid you not, I forgot to mention this, for the GameCube release, to mark the kind of expansion to the online system, they literally decided to make an actual classic GameCube controller, a wireless version, to work on the Switch too, which, that's nice, but um, they also decided to make a camera system, which, again, all of this loops into a whole thing where they decided to actually put a new button on the right controller for the Joy-Con, and it's a C button. And it's basically a in-game, in-console version of Discord, a proprietary version of Discord, effectively.
Yeah, it seemed very
Which
Discord-like.
it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. Don't get me wrong. Because remember, as we were kind of mentioning at the very beginning of the show, Nintendo is a company that very much is into the family-friendly.
Connect with your friends, connect with your family.
Yeah, it's very much that family-friendly, on-the-go type of thing. You know, it's not one of those you sit down and play for like 17 hours. It's very much kind of almost like a halfway between a big tier console like the Xbox or PlayStation and of mobile, where it's like you pick it up, you play it, but it's like serious gaming, like you would get on a serious
like,
console.
Yeah, like they set it up where it's basically, sure, you've got your powerful PC type of gaming, but you can do it on the go and anytime you want.
Yeah. So PC console gaming, but also kind of that mobility of mobile type of thing.
Yeah.
Which probably a terrible analogy, but
I
whatever.
mean, ever since they made the DS, that was like 100% the direction that they wanted to go to.
Oh yeah, they're very much the kings of the mobile space. Nobody is denying that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But you know, it's very much that idea of like considering what they are, the very family-friendly console. I was actually joking with Justin before the show. They're basically the Disney of the game space,
Yeah.
where they very much play themselves to the family-friendly aspect. So
Connect
the
with
idea
your
of having this
friends, we're
kind
all
of
family friendly. We're gonna get everyone together.
so the idea of them having this kind of in-console version of Discord makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of go along with that, they have a mic built into the actual console itself, which, fun fact, they actually said has voice canceling properties, or noise canceling
I
properties,
mean,
so
we'll see
it can
how
actually
good
filter out
that
backward
is.
noise. Yeah, we will see how good that is in practice beyond
Yeah.
lab conditions, but the fact that it is in there to some degree is impressive, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, we go all the way back to what I joked about when I get into this segment about peripherals. And drumroll, please, they've got a whole new camera to go with it. It's kind of like a little stand thingy, which apparently will play into some of the games. Like there's a Mario Party game that they're making an upgraded version for the Switch 2, which is going to have a whole new mode in it, which is all about like Bowser hosting a TV show or something like that. And you're going to appear in the game, and I don't
It's a
know.
little confusing here and there on like what the hell is actually going on here, sir. But
But it's
it's
the
a Mario
thing,
Party
apparently.
game, so you just kind of go with it.
Yeah, you just gotta go with it. But yeah, no. It's interesting to see that that does have a function though that could possibly play into some games in the future. Again, Nintendo does love their peripherals. We'll see how effective it is because not all peripherals are made equal. But if nothing else, it is interesting to kind of see. This camera, I believe, is sold separately, though don't quote me on that one. I think it is though. But again, it'll be interesting to see kind of where this goes. Maybe it'll take off. Maybe it'll become the whole new, put your face in the game kind of thing. We will see. But again, yeah, the idea of them having this kind of in-console Discord is very interesting, like I said. So
Mhm. I mean, no matter
we
what,
will see.
it definitely is a direction that they were going with because keep this in mind. During the DS era, there was a
Mm.
lot of stuff set up for people to be able to like connect and play their games together on the DS.
Oh yeah, and not even
So,
in the DS era, even.
well,
Like
not
they've been
not
doing it
not, not
for
even in
years.
just the DS era, but like the DS
Mm.
era really started to set it up, like put it in the same direction as like PC gaming, where you can go and like literally set up a lobby with your friends, kind of thing. Like go and full on set up a bunch of stuff together, type of thing.
Oh yeah, and consoles
So
have been doing that too for God knows how long too, right?
yeah,
It's one of those things where, and again, it makes sense for Nintendo, right? They're very, kind of family-oriented couch co-op kind of thing. The idea of kind of bringing that back on a more digital level, especially because of the whole fact that like the Switch is meant to be a mobile console as well as a stationary console, right? So you can kind of have it best of both ways. So again, you could very much do this where, again, I hate to use PC as kind of the be all end all here because I do like to be equal in opportunity here, so to speak. But it is the idea of like you can kind of do what you do on PC in the Switch now, where you can have those kind of lobbies of people just messing around doing things. So again, it does open the door for some interesting possibilities and conversations.
Yep.
So yeah, good to see that.
Hmm.
Oh yes. Yeah, you know what? I'll annul that part about the game share between the three systems. I kind of covered that last time we talked about the Switch too. Oh yes, I will kind of talk about the magnets, talk about the controllers. GameCube. A lot of current games. Yeah, no, they did talk about, like I said, a lot of games that are kind of on PC or trying to port over to the Switch too. Not a lot of current games. I do wonder about that. Like I said, it kind of makes me wonder they're trying to sell the idea kind of on a subconscious level of, oh, the Switch 2 is way more powerful because look at, kind of the modern games and the big consoles and PC games that we're running. Like, we're running Elden Ring, we're running Cyberpunk 2077, which I don't know if you use that as a litmus test, but it's kind of the reverse crisis.
I don't
But
think this one goes well for you there, sir.
we'll see, we'll see. I'm kind of excited to see how that plays out. But they're playing all these big games kind of subconsciously too. I'm curious, like I said, though, to just see how many games from the current gen get ported over into Switch 2. Like I said, that's where my big question is: where does the line get drawn? Um, Talk about the vampire game, expansion pack, new Pokemon game, which will be made for the Switch 2. Talked about the release date. Oh, yes, here's one final thing to do because we're approaching 31 minutes, which I'm pretty sure is shorter than all recaps we've seen so far online.
Yep.
But I do like to keep these short because they're the most generous. But anyways, actually, no, two things, but they're quick. So they've basically said that there's going to be a new micro system, new micro SD expansions for the Switch 2. Now, Switch 1 already has micro SD expansion slots, one of them anyway. But because of what they've said, the Samsung and Sun SD, I believe the two brands that I think are the ones that do most micro SDs, are going to have ones designed exclusively for the Switch 2 that are supposedly faster and far more powerful. So the old ones do not work. So if you have an old SD for your Switch 1, it will not work for the Switch 2 because they're, like I said, designing a whole new internal hardware for that.
Yeah. It's an upgraded system, so you'd need something to not only be compatible with it, but a little stronger.
Oh, and one thing I should probably mention. So we all know of what's that bot game for PSN? The flipping one that won Game of the Year. Ah, no, 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 no. I want to say
Oh,
Astro, but not that
yeah.
one. Might be Astrobot. No,
I
that's
think.
that's an old cartoon. Is hold up, hold up. Now I gotta figure this out.
Yeah.
Hold up. D D D D. Game of Thrones. No, maybe because I'm in Britain.
Mhm.
Game of the Year 2024. Astrobot. Yes, it is Astrobot. It sounds so much like Astro Boy in my head, so I get them mixed up. But anyways, so you know how Astrobot started out as kind of this thing to kind of heck demo the PS4, PS5. I think it started in PS4. Might have been the PS5.
I think it
But
started in PS4.
yeah, I think it started in PS4 and they kind of moved to PS5 and has become
Yeah.
kind of the new version of Little Big Planet to some weird extent. Looks like they're kind of trying to maybe ape that from Switch. There's a whole new little welcome tour thing that you can buy on the App Store or the Play or Nintendo's eShop, yeah, eShop they call it,
Yeah.
when the Switch 2 goes live, which will kind of be like an internal thing where you can kind of walk around the Switch internally and kind of figure out the internal parts and kind of get behind the scenes details and how some
See
features work, some things that weren't even
what
told to you.
everything does and where everything is.
Yeah, and like some features that it doesn't even tell you itself, which seems really interesting. I mean, people already kind of mess around with the Switch One's internal, so this kind of feels like something that's kind of for them too, to kind of know where everything is.
Yeah.
But it does seem kind of funny where it's like you can put like a little mini men things. I can't remember what they're called, little mini people and you just walk around the internals of the Switch too, and it's like I remember seeing that, just laughing, like they're trying to ape Astrobot here, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, you know what they say: if you're gonna copy the best. So there is that. Anyways, we covered the welcome tour. We covered the micro SD. Keyword compatible. Magnets we've already kind of touched on. Looks like that's it for my list, unless I've forgotten something, which honestly is entirely possible.
But
To the
to be
surprise of
fair,
everyone,
we've
I
already
knew.
covered a large amount for everyone.
True, we have covered a large amount. Honestly, now that I think about it, way more than I thought we would. And we're already approaching just shy of 40 minutes, shy of 40 minutes. So we're going to cut this here, because otherwise it's going to turn into an hour-long video. Any thoughts on your own, Justin? Like, what was your overall impression of the Switch 2? Oh, yes, and there's going to be a Treehouse, I think, April 7th or 8th, something like that, which is, I think, going to go into more deep dive on the Switch. So
Yes.
there's that. Anyways, impressions.
I would say overall they've definitely like Nintendo's starting to really get a good idea on how they can go and improve what they've made thus far. Like they've always been able to do that, but I think they're like really starting to step that up and show off that kind of aspect of their abilities with the Switch 2 because there's so far seems to be a major amount of differences between the two, and you just sit there and look at it and you're like, damn, you're basically making like little laptop. Like you're basically doing the same thing that Steam did with the Steam Deck. Like you're making as close to a portable tiny little PC as you can that is extraordinarily powerful.
I mean, it's a console at the end of the day, right? That's the kind of why I said about be all end all, right? Like, I struggle to use the word PC because I think PCs are very much in their own ballpark to a
I
certain
mean,
degree, right? Because here's the
yes and
thing.
no. I mean, to me, technically, no matter what, if it's running a software and specifically running a game, technically it's a PC. It's just,
I mean, yeah, but
in
that's a
this
very
case,
technical
you're
definition, ain't it?
extraordinarily limited on what you can do.
I mean, yeah, but again, that's a very technical definition. That's a thing, right? But again, I definitely get what you're going with it, right? Like, it's very much they're trying to do the kind of be all end all of the mobile gaming space, right? Like,
The
something
most
that
powerful
isn't.
that you can make.
And even then, right? It's not power, right? Necessarily, right?
No,
Because
no. It's
definitely
just
in the
like
Switch One, and even
it's got like enough qualities that makes it the most appeasing to all markets.
yeah, that's the thing, right? It's something that is powerful enough to be decent, but it's not like. And again, this is kind of where I think it is. I don't want to say better than the Steam Deck, but very different than the Steam Deck, right? Because you compare it to the Steam Deck. I honestly would argue that that's not a fair comparison. Because here's the thing: the Steam Deck basically said, "Let's make as close to a laptop we can without making a laptop for the portable market." The problem with that Steam Deck has kind of shown off in the process of its existence is that A, that is very expensive, and B, that is very big. Like even if you make something that is as powerful as the most powerful PC or even a powerful console, to like the 80th or 90th percentile, it's still going to be bulky AF. Which sure, some people it's still decent enough to lug around, but it's definitely not the penultimate thing you'd want to lug around for a long time. It's like it's definitely something that is not, something you'd lug around on a long road trip, presumably, or even if it is, it's not the ideal solution, right?
Right.
Switch, I think, is definitely trying to go for that idea of like, we want to make it powerful enough that it can run games to an acceptable degree, which is something people kind of complained about the Switch 1, right? Like, it was good, but it was still lacking in some areas. I think the Switch 2 is definitely along the lines of, like you said, kind of the be-all, end-all to the idea of let's make it as powerful as possible, but also good enough to be portable to the point where if you bring it on the road, it feels comfortable to use. Like, it's definitely something you would think like, oh yeah, I'll bring the Switch 2, you know? So, yeah, it's definitely a step up in that department. Anyways,
Yep.
that's my thoughts on the matter anyway.
No.
Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, we'll cut right here, just under the 40 mark. So, That Switch 2, everyone, comes out again June 5th. Mark the calendars. Will I buy it? Absolutely. Will I buy it at launch? Ask me again in about 2 months. So, hope you enjoyed. Hope you all found this interesting. And again, see you all next week when, I don't know, maybe Ubisoft will go under. We'll see. And have a good week, everybody. Bye bye.